Do you know of anybody who has had a diagnosis given to their child within 24 hours and then all of a sudden their world was spun into chaos? And not only that, but our guest was 8 months pregnant, and then when she birthed her baby girl, something else unexpected happened. A diagnosis of Down syndrome. Today, Vanessa Neal is going to explain and explore her story with you, giving you tangible tips on how to navigate grief when unexpected diagnosis comes your way.
Well, firstly, Vanessa, I want to say a massive thank you for being here today and being, I guess, courageous and willing to share your story.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. It's good to be here, and it's certainly a place I never thought I'd be, but I'm glad to be on the journey with you.
Well, and let's talk about that. So in a matter of months, you had a son who had a very severe diagnosis, and then your baby girl was born, which we will jump into. You were pregnant at the time of receiving some news about your son. And I guess that spun your world out pretty significantly. And you found yourself, I guess, navigating children in the disability world. What did that look like for you? And are you willing just to sort of unpack your story?
Yeah, absolutely. I have an unusual story, and again, the path I didn't think I would be journeying, but it was a bit of a shock. So 2 years ago, in November 23, my son had what we thought was a sports injury on his calf, a sudden swelling of his leg. And anyway, he had a misdiagnosis of a sports injury for a while. And being the mother that I am, I advocated a little further. Didn't feel things were right and pushed and asked for answers. So after an MRI, we found out he had a tumor in his leg, and it was wrapped around the nerve in his leg. So it was painful and severe and growing really quickly. So in an afternoon, we went from thinking he had a sports injury to being sent to a hospital 4 hours away in child oncology, just going, what the heck was going on? And yeah, I was 8 months pregnant at the time with our fourth. So all the hormones, all the emotions, all the new terminology, all the hospital jargon, and just ultimate shock.
Absolutely. I do want to, before we keep going and pushing into that story, I think you just made a really poignant point in saying that you knew as a mum something wasn't right. You had this intuition telling you that something wasn't right. I think there's something really powerful in a mother's intuition. Can you talk about that and just even going a little bit deeper into that feeling that you had towards your son?
I love this topic, Hannah. I could deep dive for a long time. Intuition has got me a lot of places in life and protected me, protected my family in many ways. And this is just another example of that. Both my partner and myself felt that something wasn't right with the diagnosis. Thankfully, we had an amazing doctor down here who also didn't think that things were right. Her worst case scenario was that it was a blood clot in his leg. And so she created a sense of urgency because of that. And I never thought it would be a tumor. Thought just didn't cross my mind at all. Not for a child. You know, you just don't think your child's going to end up in oncology. And he was in so much pain. When your child's in that amount of pain, I think all your motherly instincts kick in and you think, that's not right. And that was my first experience in the medical arena with having the medical professionals push back and say, well, this is our diagnosis. Just believe it. Just give it time. And having to sit with that, getting off a phone call, feeling a little deflated, just knowing, you know, your son's in pain there. And then on the other hand, the medical people are saying, he's fine, just give it a few more weeks, it will go away, And instinctively something comes up inside you that makes you search for more answers, get back on the phone, ask to talk to the next person and the next person and the next person. And eventually I took him down to the hospital and demanded an x-ray or something. I said, you have to look inside, what's going on? And they did an MRI, and that's when they discovered a tumor in there. And things moved really quickly from there. So instinct is everything. And it's been a big part of our surviving mechanism on this journey as well.
So talk me through that. You're now, and I guess I want to deep dive a little further into that time, if you're okay to do that. You've now got this diagnosis that your son has a tumor, has cancer.
Yeah.
Walk me through that. There's going to be people listening to this who have had their child recently diagnosed, or they have a intuition that we just talked about, that they know that something's not quite right. I remember having that with my son when he was only 9 months old. And I'm like, there's something off. I just knew that there was something not right, in inverted commas. So talk to me about when the doctor actually delivered that news, and then just coping with, I guess, your world being flipped upside down and being pregnant.
Heavily pregnant.
Heavily pregnant.
Absolutely. Look, it did come as an absolute shock. And I guess we had an overnight to prepare, or a few days, I think it was. So we got up to Christchurch, the city, 4 hours away from where we lived. We stayed with a family member, and so that we could be close to the hospital to go in immediately for any news. And that was the introduction to that painful waiting period of, you've been told there's something there. You don't know how quickly it's growing. You don't know if it's spread or not. And just waiting for answers was so painful and so stressful, and just trying to keep the hopes up for our children, and of course for our son, who didn't know what was going on. So eventually we got a call from the oncologist, who explained what was going on. They did find a tumor there. And so then we got to the hospital, and meeting with the oncologist, they also had an orthopedic surgeon there. And their first recommendation was a leg amputation. They said that we'll just deal with it. And we basically sent the surgeon out of the room and said, no, that's not happening. No, you're wrong. You just want to say you're wrong. He plays soccer and he runs constantly. You can't take that away from him, as if almost attacking the surgeon and shooting the messenger who's giving that information. You just go into this reactive mode of like, who can I blame for this? Who can put a stop to this? That was my approach anyway. I'm a little bit of a fight or flight person, mainly fight. And yeah, so from there, look, cooler heads had to prevail. And thankfully, earlier in our parenting game, we went through a bit of a situation where we were taught to take the emotions out of the situation and deal with the facts only. And that has been a really big survival mechanism for myself. So I took that approach, just breathing in and saying, okay, we're factually dealing with a medical situation here. Let's just find out the best approach, the next steps. First, we need to get him comfortable. He's in pain. So first is pain relief, and then is treatment of what is going on, and then longer term, how does this look? In my mind, so that was my 3-step approach. And it's a little hard to think clearly, but a big part of that was actually just removing the emotions from the situation and looking factually at it as if I was a fly on the wall, or as if I was just a support person turning up, which sounds really strange to say as a mother, but that was how I was able to take in the information at that time and process what was going on logistically.
Wow. I think that is really powerful, removing the emotion, because as a mum, you're obviously deeply emotionally connected to your child, like the most connected, in the whole wide world. So to be able to do that, I think there's emotional intelligence in that response there. Hold that story, because I think we need to go then to the next step, right? Because there's a few twists and turns in this story. Now you're in labor, okay? I've just put you in labor. You're about to have Cece. Yeah. Cece's born. Let's talk about the entry of Cece into the world, and keep going.
This is where it gets fun, and this is the part where I'm like,
it's where it gets spicy.
I don't even know how to explain my story, but here we go. So yeah, my son had this diagnosis, and the decision at the time was not to go ahead with amputation surgery. It was to we're able to access a medication, an oral chemotherapy. So we're really fortunate to be able to get access to that. That shrunk the tumor, and it meant that my partner and I were able to administer the oral chemotherapy to him 3 times a day, and he didn't have to be hospitalized and doing traditional chemotherapy at that time. So that's part of the context of the story. But we were still going to hospital 3 times a week for blood tests and check-ins. So we were still relocated, staying in a family member's house with our children and our dog. And Christmas was coming up, and I was heavily pregnant, now due to have baby. And we're managing just this medical schedule and pain relief around the clock, and oral chemotherapy administration around the clock. And of course, I had to be careful because I was pregnant with all of that. Amazingly, through all of that stress, I was able to, by an absolute miracle, take my pregnancy to full term. And I had had a really healthy pregnancy. There weren't any issues that had come up. So it was just normal midwifery care. In New Zealand, you have one-on-one midwife care, and it's really amazing. And then I was able to go to a private birthing centre. Finally had the birth of my dreams, a water birth that I waited 4 children for, and it was finally got it. And it was just this beautiful moment of bringing this life into the world amongst just our life had turned to chaos. And it was really amazing, and that went really smoothly. Then after she was born, Andrew and I had this beautiful hour holding Sienna, and just she was looking into our eyes and kookaring away. She did keep going limp every few minutes and just kind of losing her steam, and we took note of that, but no one seemed to be jumping up and down out of the chair about it. So we just went with it, and we had the midwife there at that time. And we just got to have that first hour of beautiful cuddles with her. And for a moment, everything was, to me, perfect, just perfect. And we were just in this little bubble, even though there was just so much going on. Our son was only 3 minutes down the road. And so that was really, really comforting as well. But then more medical staff started to come into the room. Our midwife then insisted on doing some checks on her, said, look, I really need to check her over now. And as she did, she started explaining to us that her oxygen saturation levels were low. She has almond-shaped eyes, and she has this cute little crease across her hand, which would indicate that she has Down syndrome. And that was, again, not a shock, because I was told I had a higher risk of having a baby with Down syndrome, but the risk category they put me in was an extra 3% chance. So
and why was that? Why were you in high risk?
Yeah, so it actually showed up on my blood tests. You have the 12-week scans and the Down syndrome blood tests that go along with that. And a few weeks after that scan, at the scan they said, nothing to see here. And a few weeks after, I did get a call from the radiologists who said, your bloods have come back, and that indicates a higher level of whatever chemical in my blood, to indicate there could be traces of Down syndrome there, but nothing's showing up in the scan. So I said, again, statistically, what are the chances there, and what do I need to do? Like, is there any risk to the baby? And they said, well, statistically, it's 1 in 30, so that's a 3% chance. And so I said, well, I'm not going to do further diagnosis at this time. That's, doing the diagnosis.
And of course, you're in the top 3%. Only you can be in the top 3% of the world, mate.
Hannah, I'm in the top 1%.
Yeah.
Of unique characters. Oh my goodness. So I guess that blow had been kind of softened a little bit, in the sense that we knew that there was a chance there, but it wasn't a high chance. So there was a little bit of preparation in the spirit for that, but not enough to go digging further, and something I chose to not stress about at the time. So just normal pregnancy process. So when we were given that diagnosis, it wasn't a shock. It was just a pit in my stomach feeling. Just that feeling of, with my son's diagnosis, in my mind, it was, okay, we deal with this cancer diagnosis, we get this dealt with, and we're out the other side and get on with life. With her potential diagnosis, because it was potential at that time, it was this feeling of, wow, this is her whole life ahead of her. How does that look for her? Older daughter who is in university, and she has all of the opportunities before her in life. She's just doing so well. She makes friends easily. She'll be able to independently travel and have whatever job she wants. All of these things, a nice looking boyfriend, and all these fun things. And in that moment when we're told Sienna might have Down syndrome, I just thought, wow, what is that life going to look for her? How do I protect her from the mean things that people might say, or the children who might not want to play with her in the playground because she looks different or she speaks differently? And I guess suddenly all of these fears came up, not for me, but for her. And suddenly I was just dealing with this, wow, this is the rest of her life that she is going to have to navigate this. Yes, we have to navigate it, but for her. And I guess just this grief came up for me. in that moment is all I can describe it as. And so I wasn't holding her at the time. She was on the observation table, and I only got to hold her one more time before she was sent off to NICU after that. But I felt this kind of disconnect in a way. Loved her as my daughter, but just felt this disconnect from the reality of the situation. I actually just wanted to grab her and run away with her.
Let's sit in that, because that's very real, that grief that you touched on. And thank you for, again, opening your heart, because there are going to be so many people that can resonate with this. And I think anyone who has had a child with a diagnosis, inverted commas, or a label placed over their life, or you look down the lens of what the future looks like and it does look different, then it's very real, and that grief is very real. And I don't think we often speak about as mothers, because we're so often in the moment of providing care, responding to the situation, responding to medical teams, to doctors, to questions, because all of a sudden you're now thrown into questions and you're just navigating a medical system, and especially in infancy, because they're trying to ascertain and grab information from you. And then you as a human, you as a mother, are navigating your very raw and very real emotions. So in that grief, and we all navigate grief differently, and there's no right or wrong way, what did that look like for you? And I guess with Cece, she's not quite 2 yet. She's still got a whole bunch of living to do. So what does that look like for you when grief, I guess, strikes your heart? And what do you do with that? How do you work through that?
Yeah, I'm still working through it. Because there's a grief process of the whole situation for my son as well, and then for my wee daughter Cece. And I guess navigating it, part of it is actually just choosing, and I know this sounds a little bit woo-woo, but to be grateful for what they have. The fact that they have loving, supportive parents that Andrew and I chose to just pull together and provide what they needed. We just agreed that we needed to, around the cancer diagnosis, it was right on Christmas time, that we just needed to give the children the best Christmas possible. And we went just overboard to do that and really make a lot of fun of the situation. And with Sienna, I think we just appreciate her for exactly what she is. And look, the thing is that she's part of our family now. And she's like any of the other children. They treat her as any of the other siblings. And we just see her for who she is. She has this huge personality, and she's cheeky, and she's hilarious, and she laughs all the time. She smiles so much. She's brought so much joy to us. So when we look at her, we don't see the diagnosis necessarily. We don't see the weight of how her future looks. In some ways, I've had to shut out those fears and those questions to just stop worrying about what her future looks like, provide an amazing life for her now, provide her with the tools that she needs now, and provide our other children with the tools and resources necessary to be able to look after her later in life when perhaps we're not there to look after her, because those fears have come up as well. I'm very grateful that we do have 4 children, so you can spread that responsibility around a little bit. And so for us, we put our energy into nurturing our family and our children to look out for each other, to look after each other, to make sure that throughout adult life, when they're adults, they have each other's back. And that helps quell some of my fears for her, knowing that she could perhaps live with her brother, or she can work in our businesses. And, she always has a friend in her siblings. They have so much fun with her. They know about her diagnosis. They know about Down syndrome, but they don't treat her any differently, as we don't treat her any differently either, apart from where we medically necessarily need to. And she just slots in as part of the family, and you stop seeing that diagnosis and the weight of it. If you choose to block it out, though, you do have to actually overcome that in your mind.
Yeah, that is a good point. So if I go back to your watching her being wheeled off into the neonatal intensive care unit for observation, you're dealing with that weight of that grief. And then all of a sudden, is it 10 days later, she had heart surgery?
Yeah, so the timeline was 9 weeks later.
9 weeks,
Once
10 weeks
it
later.
was,
Sorry, yes.
No, that's okay. That's okay. A lot has happened in both of our worlds in that time. So she was from the birthing centre. She was taken to the women's hospital in the city by ambulance, and then I was taken by my midwife to the hospital next door. And so, just going back to that night, how that looked, she was in NICU, and I didn't really know much about NICU. I knew it existed, but didn't really know much about it until you're thrown in it. And then I was in the hospital next door, upstairs, just separated from her, which felt very unusual and scary. And of course, then the pediatrician came down and gave me the diagnosis, said, we've done a heart scan on her because so her oxygen saturation levels were low, and that was the emergency situation. They said it turns out that she has an AV canal defect, so 2 major holes in the lining of her heart, in the interior lining of her heart, and she has 1 AV valve instead of 2. So her body was having to work very hard to pump blood around. That's why she was going limp every few minutes. It was a really scary situation, and they said that they wanted to do surgery as soon as possible, but she was so little and her heart was so little that she has a better rate of survival and a better success for surgery the more she can grow. So at 2:00 in the morning, I'm sitting in this hospital room by myself next door to the hospital where little baby is, and they're basically saying it's a life-threatening situation, but we'll try to buy as many weeks as we can and just get her growing. So she needs feeding, she needs breast milk, but she's in an incubator. You can't feed her. We need to tube feed her. So here's a milk expressor. Get expressing. So again, just this situation. I did not know this could happen to people. I just didn't know you could end up in this situation.
So in that, before you go in, and yes, like all of a sudden, a baby that you would expect to be suckling off your breast and being fed by you
Cuddling.
as her mum,
Yeah.
cuddling, bonding, doing the normal things, she's now separated from you. For somebody that's listening or knows somebody who could be going through this situation, because it happens so quickly, in those moments, in those 2 a.m. moments that you just spoke about, because they're the very real moments where you're laying in bed, eyes wide awake, catching up with your thoughts, like from a tangible, practical way of supporting someone. What would support have looked like for you in those wee hours or those following days when you know that it's a life-threatening situation? You've got a son now with cancer. What does that look like for someone to lean into your world?
From a support perspective?
Yeah, from a support perspective for yourself.
Yeah.
But also, and I guess a two-pronged answer, what did it look like for you to get through that mentally? Gratitude, you touched on gratitude before, but when you're sleep deprived, you're bleeding because you just had a baby.
Yeah.
You're getting milk, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
Your child is separated. You're catching up with this new diagnosis that was unexpected. Gratitude may not have been on top of your list. It may have, but
No.
But what was sitting there for you?
I just cried so much. I cried so much because of the lack of control was a big part of it. And suddenly I was sitting there thinking, I need to lean into our community. Who do we have around us we need help right now? Because our son with the cancer diagnosis needed one of us to be with him administering chemotherapy and pain relief around the clock. It's not something that we could outsource to someone else. We have a 6-year-old who needed to be looked after. I obviously I was in hospital and I needed to be with baby, and I then was expressing milk 8 times every 24 hours and then having that tube fed to her. And then we had an older daughter who usually I would just call in and say, right, I need you to I don't have an overnight bag because I thought I was just going to give birth and go straight back to a family member's house. So,
Of course you did.
There are things I need. I don't have makeup.
I was going in for a baby. I'll be back after dinner.
Exactly.
Okay.
Of all the things I'm thinking about, I'm like, I look horrendous. And And you have all of these medical people coming into the room, and some of them are good looking, and you're just sitting there feeling like ugly inside and out, and post-baby and everything. I mean, I'm incredibly vain. But these things make me feel in control. So, you know, when I can pull myself physically together, I feel more in control. And I'm just sitting there on this bed, bawling my eyes out, thinking, I have a child here, I have a child there, I have a child there. And then the next morning, so Andrew, my partner, is checking on me, checking on the baby, driving 45 minutes back to see where the boys are. And then he said, well, I haven't heard from our daughter, our older daughter, in a couple of days. She said she's not very well. I'm going to go over and see her. So he drives to the other side of town to check on her. I'm not answering your question. I'm just kind of filling out the story of how I was sitting at the time.
Yeah, I remember.
So he goes to check on her, and she's lying in bed. She's been on her back for 4 days, not able to get out of bed without passing out. And she's just in a really bad way. And you have to get checked. So she'd been going to the doctor and getting sent back home. You have a virus, you need to sleep it off. So he rushes back to the hospital to see me. And then that's when we just said, who can we lean on? She needs to be medically checked because something's going on there. She's not right. We need someone to look after the other
We will take
children.
the family suite. That's what you should have said.
Yeah.
We'll take the family suite upstairs, please.
Exactly.
We're all coming.
Yeah, exactly. We're all moving in. We come with a drive. And so started to lean in, called my sister, thankfully, who lived in the same city, and she was getting ready. She was heading to work for the day. And I said, I need you to turn around and I need you to go pick up my daughter and take her to hospital. Something's wrong. And I think she may have a kidney infection or something. Something's wrong. So she said, sure, turned her truck around. She went to see my daughter, and she dealt with 2 days of her getting rejected at the hospital. So I then had another child in hospital. My two daughters were in separate hospitals, and I was in the one right in the middle. I couldn't get to either of them. I could get to the baby. I couldn't get to my other daughter. And then my two sons were out over there. Andrew was just flying back and forth between everyone for 2 days straight. Hadn't slept since the birth. And so it was just a crazy, crazy time. And I was just sitting on this bed, bawling my eyes out, trying to express milk that wasn't coming because I was so stressed and I hadn't been able to hold my baby. So all of my hormones weren't there, and there was just no oxytocin happening, and just crying, feeling so out of control. And I just had to lay it all before God and just say, I don't even know what to pray right now, but this is a crazy situation and I need help. I need people to turn up. And I'm not very good at asking people for help. Raise your hand if that's you. I'm not very good at asking people for help. I'm not very good at being vulnerable. I'm usually the strong one, and I like to help people, and I like to keep things in control for my family. And here I was not able to advocate for my daughter, who was still being rejected by the hospital and the medical staff, who said, you may have meningitis, you may have this, you may have that. And of course, we're still having to do oncology appointments and the like. So there was a lot going on. And so I just prayed that people would turn up and I wouldn't have to ask. But that didn't necessarily happen. I actually had to let people vulnerably know what was happening. So I called up a friend who usually only sees me when I look pretty and we go out for wines and everything's nice. And I just called her up and said, can you, after work, turn up with deodorant and shampoo and soap and some nuts to snack on because the hospital food is just not helping my milk supply? And she did. She stepped up and it was just amazing. She turned up with this beautiful bag of goodies for me with the whole foods and beautiful like honey for energy and natural lip balms and all the things. And we just chatted.
Amazing.
It was amazing, and I was able to just be open and vulnerable with her. And then, of course, she was able to open up to me that she had already journeyed through a situation like this with her sister. So she knew how to handle the situation. She just handled it. And she was just such a calm in that storm.
And isn't that interesting, the power of vulnerability? When you're vulnerable with somebody else, it then gives permission for somebody else to be vulnerable with you.
Yeah.
And I think there is so much power in sharing your story, exposing it. And because as Brené Brown says, we are hardwired for connection.
Yeah.
And there's something very powerful in that. Now we're out of the hospital and you're at home. Cece's had her 10-week operation.
Yes. Yeah.
Now you've got Angus finishing off chemo. He rang the bell at the hospital. I remember seeing that, which
Yeah.
stated that he was all good, thumbs up, healthy. He overcame the cancer. However, the story then twisted and turned again.
Yeah.
And what did that look like?
Yeah, it did. And again, motherly instinct kicked in at that time. I felt that ringing the bell was premature. And something inside me just said, just hold yourself on reservations, stay alert. It wasn't that I didn't want to have hope that the cancer had gone. The hospital, the tests showed that the tumor had disappeared and he was able to go through that process of exiting on. But something in my spirit and my gut just said, just be aware and keep an eye on things. Have hope, have faith, but just be aware. And yeah, so we left and it felt like we could start getting back into life in a new way. Cece had been through her heart surgery and she was just finishing being tube fed, which was amazing. So I was then able to just breastfeed her naturally, which was incredible. And then we were able to go home and stay at home and our son was able to get back into school. So life started to look really normalized in a new way for a little bit. And he was able to walk again because the tumor had shrunk. So things were looking good. But that instinct in your gut just sits there when you're a parent and you notice things. And I noticed the swelling came back in our son's leg really quickly. And he didn't seem to be in pain at that time, but I just noticed it was swelling and came back fast. And I said to my partner, the tumor's back. It's back. And we need to get him up for testing straight away. And if it's back, we know what we need to do. And that is a leg amputation. We knew that was the next step, which we had tried to avoid at that time. When we were first told that was the best approach to take with his diagnosis was just leg amputation, it will deal with the situation right there and then. We didn't want to hear it. We didn't want to hear that truth. We wanted to run away from that reality. We did. But then for us, the priority was preserving his life. You know, it's a disease that can obviously take over your body so quickly. I lost my mum to cancer when she was only 52, and I was aware of how quickly it could take hold. So our priority was just to preserve his life, whatever we need to do. We were able to get access to this oral chemotherapy. It was a new treatment, and that was great. It shrunk the tumor right down, but it didn't get rid of the root of it completely, and that's when it came back. Sure enough, he had an MRI, and it showed that the tumor had come back, and we just knew the next step was a leg amputation. And because of where the tumor was and where the tissues attached, it was high up in his calf. It was an upper leg amputation, which is major. So that took us into that next stage of, wow, how does the rest of his life look now? Now he is going to be, yeah.
Can I just interject there as your girlfriend?
Yeah.
In that time, what I loved about one thing that you did was you gave yourself permission to go offline. So
Yes.
I just remember one of the coping mechanisms and one of the ways that you protected your family, because you had just had so much going on and had some, so much going on. But one of the things that I really respected about how you guys navigated this next season of when he had his leg amputated was you're like, guys, you sent out like a group chat to, I guess, your family and your nearest and dearest. And we were able to walk through that journey with you in the background. But at that time, you also just wanted your own space with your little tribe and just to really focus on your family. And I think that what I loved about that is you gave permission to put boundaries in place that were needed for your family. And I think many times we are so worried about how do we also serve other people in the process of navigating our chaos, and what will people think, and what if we offend that person because we're giving out of an empty tank. But so I just really want to celebrate that you were able to put those boundaries in place and show others that that's what you needed. And I think for anybody listening to this who I guess, shies away from actually looking after themselves and their family because they're too concerned about what other people might think or offending other people. This is just a timely reminder just to say what you need is okay, especially in times of crisis and chaos and navigating uncharted territory. So this is your permission to do that. So during the recovery period, you sort of came back online, and that's what I loved. Can I ask, I guess in the last couple of minutes of closing, definitely I want you to keep sharing the part of the story that you just were at. But
Yeah.
can you also intertwine, because you have the most incredible mindset that I think I've ever met. Like, you are so resilient, you are so powerful in the way that you execute gratitude constantly. And that's just something that naturally comes into your life. You are a glass half full kind of a girl.
Yes.
In, I guess, the second part of your answer, can you intertwine, I guess, some practical tools that you do so you stay in that position of positivity, but still being real at the same time?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Hannah. Boundaries, absolutely. That's been something that I have learnt and had to put into practice, and it was hard. I'm a chronic people pleaser, recovering people pleaser, put that out there. But putting boundaries in place around communication, or even not having to explain everything to everyone. So just back to that boundary side of things, what I did was I chose my sister to be my advocate and tell other people what was going on. So I said, I'll update you with the information, and my dad, I'll update you with the information, and then can you go and send that out to the people who are praying for us, the people who I'm happy to know what is going on. I gave her a bit of a list of, these are the people who I'm happy, and when I'm happy to let people know what's going on or an update or this is our life, I will put that on social media or let people know. And putting those, again, it was leaning into the community, allowed me to put those boundaries in place. And it's a hard thing to do, is to say to people, look, I know you want to support me right now, but I'm not going to engage with that. But I had incredible people, even like yourself, would just send beautiful messages and say things like, don't respond. Don't respond to this. I just want to say I'm thinking of you. And messages like that have just gave me permission to appreciate what was being said, fill my cup with their words, and to be in that moment with my family, to be in that season with my family. And that's something that I've continued to do with other people since then who I've known going through those situations. And on a practical level, I am blessed with extreme positivity in life in general. And I think that comes from my parents. But I also appreciate life is short. Again, like I said, I lost my mum when she was young. And so in my mind, I am aware that life is short, and you don't want to dwell in fear, because fear will consume you and the weight of a situation. But you do also need to go through the process of grief and feeling it, and you need to feel everything. So from a practical perspective, I have journals. I have my gratitude journal, which I did get in the midst of everything, so that I could write down 3 things at the end of every day that I was grateful for. And you can always find something to be grateful for, even in your darkest days. Sometimes it is, I'm so grateful I had hot coffee today. You know, I'm so grateful I got to cuddle my baby for one more day. And I'm so grateful I live in a country where we can access surgeons and it's funded. You know, things like that came up, so that really helped. And back in the day, I just didn't take those kind of things seriously, but very practical help. And my other one is in my ugly journal. So this is the one that no one gets to see, but I call it my ugly journal because it has everything ugly that I feel, or my grief, my anger, my pain, my frustrations, my questions, the things that I want to yell at God, but can't yell or say out loud, or I'm just sobbing and crying. It goes in the ugly journal. And for me,
that.
It offloads everything that's in my mind that is bogging me down, and I can just get it out on paper, and then I can just close it and I can sleep. You know, you can then sleep. And I try breathing techniques, but I do struggle with that, just being a naturally hyperactive person. So I'm working on that.
Is that because you have to be still? It's like, this is way too boring.
6 seconds.
6 seconds.
I
Okay,
can't
we've
do
done
this.
this. You hyperventilate rather than reset your nervous system.
I'm a sugar, so I'm working on that.
I love it. It's beauty in the chaos is what was my thinking. And maybe that's something we can kind of work on for all our mamas is creating like a journal that we call Beauty in the Chaos.
Yeah.
Because beauty can rise up out of the most the most chaotic moments in our lives.
Yeah.
And we can see such a richness. I think the journey gives us a depth that is so, you can't explain. You cannot, there's almost no language to be able to articulate the depth that our journeys take us through and on and who we become. Like there's just, and even for our children, like the siblings of, you know, those navigating, you know, siblings with additional needs.
Yeah.
But I guess in closing, and just like, thank you. Like, I'm just so deeply grateful that you have gone to the different places that you did today. And I know that this is just the beginning for you because you are joining, or you have joined the team at StrongHER Side. One of the co-founders, or the co-founder, which I'm so deeply thankful for.
I'm deeply thankful for.
We have such a heart. We've got 240 million mothers globally raising children with additional needs, or those with disability, if you're looking at the statistic. 240 million. And I keep harping on about the statistics of isolation and the chronic illness and depression and suicidal rates and financial impact. But you and I share the same heartbeat for those who we are leaning into. Yeah. But for those who are watching and listening, and I'm putting you on the spot here, is it that made you say yes to this mission, to this impact?
Everything in me. So one of my mantras, because I am in a new season now of having to redefine my identity, to change what my plans were. My world looks different now. I'm still attending medical appointments every 10 days, every 2 weeks, still traveling a lot, having to, you know, logistically all the things. I can't really put my daughter into care, so I can't work like I used to. So my world looks different, and that changed the opportunities that I had as well. I was in the process of launching a business when I got pregnant with Sienna, and that dream has been parked to the side for now, just because I can't put the time into it. So I wasn't necessarily looking for opportunity, but I was praying for the right opportunity to come along where it was purpose-led. And then I think you and I talked, or you reached out and said you just wanted some assistance, and I thought I can help you out in this very practical, technical area. I'd love to just help you get things going. And then as we kind of got going with that and things started evolving, and then you asked me could I interview you on the podcast? Hell yes, that's a hell yes. So my mantra is, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And that's how I choose what to do in life, basically. It works for me. I don't know, you can take what you want out of that, but it works for me. So then you just boldly said to me, can you do this podcast with me? And everything in my spirit just said, hell yes. That's a hell yes, without even thinking about it. There was no pre-thought about it. There was no, how do I weave my way into this? Can I be a part of this? I just wanted to get behind what you were doing, because I know your heart. I know your heart for women. I know your integrity, and I will back anything you do. But this project in particular has your whole life story and passion on it. I know how passionate you are about women in general and mothers and advocating for them. You have a voice, a beautiful, articulate voice, and a story and a journey. And you can speak for the mothers who aren't brave enough to speak yet. You can say the things that we don't know how to articulate. I'm new in the journey of raising children with disabilities. You're 17 years into it. So there are things I can lean into and ask you and gain that knowledge from you. And you can, you've journeyed ahead, you're still journeying, and there's still a lot ahead of you to navigate, but you can reach back to me and say, hey, I've been there before. Let me hold your hand while you take that next step. And that's what you've done for me. And that's what I see you can do through this podcast for millions of mothers around the world, or anyone who's going to tune into this. So that's a hell yes from me, 100% backing from me. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that you are using your story and your voice to reach mothers like myself and hopefully others around the world as well.
Thank you. That was unexpected and quite humbling, but thank you. Yes, my heart is definitely just to lean in and to create impact and to create support and to create communities.
Yeah.
Every mother navigating this road knows she's not walking alone. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it there, but I know that this is only the beginning of hearing from you, and I'm excited to be sharing, I guess, this space with you and all the other people who are listening. And I'm very, very excited for the future. Bring it on.
Me too. Yes. Thanks, Hannah. This has been amazing. I feel like this has been a counselling session for me. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ness.
All right. Bye.